The independent agency Clockwork now has 3 branches, one here in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and also the United Kingdom. And I'm told is currently launching the Clockwork UK Studios, a production house which is going to serve clients based in that country. Now listen to this, at a time when the brand communications industry, in my opinion, is battling to find new meaning, maybe even relevance in a very fragmented environment, this is a standout success story. I want to introduce you now to Co-Chief Executive Officer and Co-Founder Tom Manners. Tom, a very warm welcome to Mags on Media. Obviously, your agency is making music at the moment, looking at the backdrop behind you. Where are you seeing opportunity right now?
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be here with you. Yeah, I think there's a tremendous opportunity at the moment, both at home and outside of our borders. You know, I think the comms and advertising landscape in South Africa is certainly changing, and we're seeing we've seen a flow towards more integrated agencies that have strong communications capabilities in the last 3 or 4 years. So there's certainly a big growth spurt in that space for us. And you know, we've been enjoying some new opportunities which would have typically been preserved for above the line agencies that would you know, create a TV spot and run with a typical campaign you know, beforehand. And then more significantly, I think where we're seeing the most opportunity is utilizing South Africa as a hub for global clients. So out of our office in London, which is 18 months old now, we're starting to win global work in the form of brands like Peyronie and Xbox. And really the model is focused on utilizing and leveraging the fantastic creative talent pool that we have in South Africa, arbitraging the cost benefit, of course, given the state of the rand to the pound and the rand to the dollar, and then also, you know, finding some symbiosis with the client in terms of timing. Obviously, being in the same geographic time zone is tremendously valuable for us. Yeah.
I want to talk about the global hub argument in just a moment, because I think it's a very important one. But in terms of your managerial approach, your business approach, how have you had to ramp up? How has your thinking needed to change, particularly, Tom, over the past year or so when, as I said in my introduction, things have become very, very different? It's a new paradigm.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, you know, I was quite a stalwart for having everyone in the office and, you know, enjoying spending time with all of our staff. Obviously, we have quite a large staff base, so that was quite enjoyable for me. So when COVID hit, I think that was the biggest change for us. Obviously, we had to go to a completely remote working structure. And now what we're doing is applying a hybrid structure to working. And I don't think we'll ever go back again. And that's the biggest change that we've seen. To the extent that our Joburg office isn't even large enough now to cater for all the staff that we have in Johannesburg. And so we don't plan to increase the size of our offices. We've been very vocal to our staff that you know, a hybrid working structure is here to stay, and we don't plan to change that whatsoever. And so that's been the biggest change, Jeremy. And also, you know, we have had to play defensively as well in the last 2 years. You know, as an independent agency in South Africa with tremendous growth prospects and ambitions, you know, the last 8 years have really been about reinvesting all of the money that we've made into new skills, new products, and new capabilities. You know, when COVID hit, we had to be a little bit more circumspect about the decisions that we've made. We are starting to loosen the reins on that somewhat now. But that defensive mindset is definitely an important aspect to our success at the moment. And I think every agency leader has had to think that way. So it'll be interesting in the next 6 months now that we're coming out of you know, being fully masked and getting to see everyone again, you know, what the market will do, how defensively we need to play, how much we can invest in new services. I mean, one example that we're currently thinking about is e-commerce, because that's obviously exploded over the last 2 years, given, you know, us all being stuck at home and having to have packages delivered to us. And so the ubiquity of e-commerce in South Africa is a tremendous opportunity, in my view, for consumer brands. And I don't think that we're really on par globally with you know, the skill sets that the US and the UK might have, for example, in terms of dealing with that from a marketing perspective. So many changes. But yeah, I think from the physical through to the sort of strategic, that probably encapsulates it.
That's the internal side. You've obviously had to change the tenor, the nature of your conversation with clients.
Yes, I mean, obviously, you know, the last 2 years have, for many of our clients, presented a tremendous amount of challenges to them. We work, and we're very fortunate to work with many of the bigger blue chip clients in South Africa, from banks through to FMCG clients, alcohol, etc. There hasn't been a single one that hasn't been significantly hit at a strategic level, over the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously, from COVID through to the July riots, for example, we've had clients' factories being burnt down. We've had a delay in shipping of actual stock in many cases for our consumer electronics clients. And so for them, we've had to really partner strategically to completely reimagine their world and rethink the approach that they take to marketing. When you can't sell a service, it can be very difficult to maintain your reputation, and not to let sort of outside externalities impact that too heavily. And so we've had to really sit down, go back to the drawing board over the last 2 or 3 years with them. And what I am seeing is that sort of purpose-led campaigns, ESG, for example, and sort of brand campaigns are certainly on the priority list for our clients, more so than ever before, which is an interesting shift.
How on earth do you reimagine a client's world? Where do you start?
Well, I think it typically starts with the harsh reality of not being able to, for example, get products into the country, or have an ATM working in KwaZulu-Natal. And at that point, we just kind of have to say, what is our responsibility as an organization to the people of South Africa? What is our responsibility as an organization to our stakeholders and shareholders? And how are we going to communicate effectively to own up to our own mistakes, but then also to manage the sort of the impact of what we can't control. And so it really starts with a conversation at a strategic level, identifying some of the sort of communication and reputation drivers that we were focusing on, which were typically very product orientated, and then shifting that more into a realm of speaking to purpose, speaking to what it actually means to be a South African organization, for example, and then changing the entire communication structure and strategy to leverage more of those intangibilities rather than the product component exclusively.
Give me a little potted history here. You're a journalist, and then you became a comms guy. How did that happen? How did the agency start?
Yeah, by mistake. As
all good stories do, I suppose.
Yes, I was a technology journalist initially, and I think the component that I really enjoyed about journalism wasn't necessarily doing super investigative stories. It was more about kind of getting to events, schmoozing with the right people, getting to know people, and then getting the story out and filed as quickly as possible. So that was a strength of mine. And journalism really wasn't for me. As you would know, it can get very stressful, and you travel an awful lot. And so as I started getting older, I was receiving a lot of content from PR agencies, and this is, over a decade ago now, that I felt was extremely poor and extremely generic. Sadly, the industry hasn't changed that much since then, but we felt that we could do a better job. I pushed myself into a direction where, or rather, I started saying to myself that we can do this, and partnered with my best friend and partner, Nick, who's still with us today, and we started Clockwork. And that was really at the advent of social for brands in South Africa, at least. And so it was quite easy to walk into some of our contacts and say, hey, Nintendo or PlayStation, who are 2 of our earliest clients, we can do your social media strategy for you and handle your communities. And so that's really where it kicked off. Didn't expect it to become what it is today, but here we are.
I suspect that you were one of the early adopters in seeing the importance of relevant and finely tuned content, which is now driving the comms wave.
Yeah, I think so, Jeremy. We've seen with the social and digital shift of brands from traditional platforms over to digital platforms, we've seen more of an emphasis being placed on storytelling, leveraging longer form content, understanding how to weave a narrative over a period of time, versus what we call old school advertising, which is more sort of a moment in time and very sort of cell orientated. So television spots, outdoor, radio, etc. All of those mediums, still retain their relevance today. So I'm never going to be a proponent to say that TV is going to die, because it's not. But this sort of entirely new space opened up for brands to engage with with their clients and customers. And I do think that we were on the crest of that wave. And because we had that editorial mindset, we understood how to not have such a strong product and sale orientated message and take more of a community building message to the brand and to the communities. And so I think that worked quite well for us. And yeah, that's kind of the drum that we've been banging ever since. Yeah.
Why the United Kingdom?
Well, it's obviously a very big market, but I think more relevant to that is the fact that I feel that South Africa is a massively untapped market because we have an incredible, I mean, if you look at Cairns this year, we have an incredible creative pool of talent in this country. Sadly, due to some of the realities that we face in South Africa, a lot of the really good talent, both client side and agency side, are leaving for greener pastures. But we still have this fantastic, very large talent pool. We have a English-speaking country. We have an affordable labor force, and a lot of the work that the large groups are doing already is taking strategy and creative out of the UK and Europe and bringing it back to South Africa for production. And so in 2015, we won Xbox as a client out of Reading in the UK, which at the time was our largest client, still is our largest client, and that's just really ballooned and grew. And the client was really quite comfortable with the entire team of 23 people being here in Johannesburg and doing the work. He was getting the benefit of cost, and the work was just as good as he needed it to be. And so we thought there's definitely an opportunity here. And so, you know, pursuant to that, we went out and found ourselves a team in the UK and started trying to leverage this opportunity. And it was a big risk because obviously the salaries in the UK are tremendously high in comparison to South Africa. Fortunately, it's paid off, and it seems to be. It looks like we've hit on a good idea so far.
Where have the pitfalls been? I mean, how have you must have made mistakes. How have you overcome them?
Of course, yeah. So I mean, I think the biggest sort of underestimation that we made was the size of the London agency market. So to give you an idea, there are over 1,000 active agencies in the city of London right now. And so you really have to be the best of the best in order to succeed.
It's a shark.
Yeah, it is a shark tank. It is the biggest shark tank out there, besides for maybe New York. And so I think we expected to kind of waltz in there with no brand recognition and a couple of case studies and some hotshot ad guys that had been working in London for their whole careers and that we're going to do tremendously well. That wasn't necessarily true. We had to spend a long time, pushing a rock up a hill, trying to get smaller projects in, improving ourselves. And then critically, we just could not make any mistakes on those projects. And so it was, there's a lot more leniency in the South African market than in the UK. And so we had to really, really jack up our operations and make sure that what we were delivering was always at the highest level, and then take any opportunity that we could. And then fortunately a lucky break occurred in December with Peyronie, and that's kind of opened the floodgates for us. But it is a shark tank, and that's probably the biggest challenge.
What exactly are you doing for Peyronie?
Yeah, so Peyronie, we pitched against a number of large London agencies. Actually, our co-CEO, Richard Dutton's ex-agency Engine, which is 1,800 people, and we won. And which was quite a nice moment for him, coming into this new role and beating his old agency. And our job now for Peyronie is threefold. So we are the content and production agency of record for Peyronie in the UK and Europe. So our primary job is to take TVC assets that Peyronie creates in Italy and then reskin them, re-edit them for different channels across the UK and Europe. So all of the F1 stuff for Sky, ITV, Channel 4, etc. If there's a Peyronie ad on there, we've done it and we've handled all of the uploads. In addition to that, then we do their talent management. So what we've been tasked with is to go out and find a young hopeful, who I can't mention right now, but a very exciting young actor who will be shooting a number of brand films with this year, a young British actor. And then finally, as I alluded to earlier, our third leg to it is the brand films. And so we'll be shooting 3 or 4 sort of brand experience films throughout the year at a number of different places. The first is going to be Silverstone, which is the F1. As an F1 fan, I'm very excited about that. The GQ Awards later in the year. So it's really a big step up for us as a South African agency to get that opportunity.
And such a great brand to work on. It has such a pedigree and such a history.
And it's a good beer as well.
Let us not deny them that. All very well, Tom Manners. How do you build on this going forward? Obviously, it's the springboard to what?
Well, our ultimate ambition, and some people have laughed at me for saying this, but is to become a fully networked global agency that is leveraging this model that I've described to you today. So our next step will certainly be into Europe. We don't know where just yet, but we will certainly be extending into Europe in the next 2 or 3 years. And then once we build some scale, we're hoping to look at the US as well. Obviously, the US is an entirely different monster, and that really takes a lot of resources and time. Ultimately, if you were to fast forward 10 years from now, what I want to do, or what we are striving to do, is to have an agency with sort of 10 or 11 global offices in major cities, working with global brands and some very big stuff. And then I think more significantly is that we built a hub in South Africa that employs 500, 600, 700 people doing some world-class work, creating jobs in South Africa, and creating a business that is meaningful and benefits the economy. And that is not just a sort of a statement. It is something I'm really passionate about. I mean, there have been people that have said to me, this is obviously a ploy just to leave South Africa, and it's not. It's an opportunity to build a fantastic company and a fantastic base in South Africa, and to provide jobs to more people, and to bring more graduates out of the system, and to teach them and sort of induct them into the global advertising system. And that's tremendously exciting for us.
Final question to you, and I'll choose my words carefully because yours is such an optimistic story, and I wish you so much success. But we're also talking right now in South Africa against the spectre of stage 6 load shedding, an economy that is battered. I'm not going to go through all the economic ills. I also referenced at the beginning of our conversation that this is a fragmented industry that you work in, and one that is battling right now. What's your short-term outlook for 2022, given the inherent optimism that you've expressed to me about where your business is going?
Look, I don't think we can beat around the bush. There are realities that we face in this country that make it very difficult to do business. Obviously, aspects like load shedding, for example, service delivery process, etc. When you look at working with clients that are moving physical product, or banks, for example, there are real challenges for them, and that makes it difficult for us. Obviously, leveraging the global economy, which is not faring much better, to be honest with you, at the moment, is a solve. But maybe if I kind of give you a longer answer. As the child of a Zimbabwean immigrant family that came here and made good on nothing, and also some very trying circumstances, arriving in the late 80s with 25% interest rates. The reality is that the private sector can and always does grow and find opportunity in hardship. And I truly believe that it is entrepreneurship in this country that is going to drive us forward. And despite all the challenges that we face in 2022, I don't think it's going to get much better for government, and I think it's going to get very hard for the consumer. But you will see and have seen organizations that are well run, that are privately managed, and that are hungry emerge out of the chaos and succeed. And I truly believe that success is found in hardship. And I'm very optimistic. You can call me a fool, but I think there's tremendous opportunity out there.
And you've always got the 6th string behind you if all else fails.
Indeed.
Tom Manners, thank you very much for joining me on Mags on Media.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's great.